Hello and welcome. We are live from New Delhi. You're watching DD India Live, India's voice to the world. I'm Abhishek Mahajan. Coming up in the next 30 minutes. Nikki Haley embraces Trump's candidacy, says unified Republican Party essential to saving country. Reaffirming his decision to stay in the race despite calls to reconsider, US President Joe Biden says he is all in to seek re-election on November 5. Rwandan President Paul Kagame wins fourth term with 99% of votes. 66-year-old Kagame thanks Rwandans for giving him another 5 years in office. And torrential rains wreak havoc worldwide. Thousands stranded in Canada as flash floods hits highways and roads in Toronto. In US, dam failure in Nashville prompts evacuations. Republicans wrap up day 2 of the National Convention with fiery pro-Trump speeches. Donald Trump arrived at the venue to a much more jovial mood than on Tuesday. Seated beside his running mate, J.D. Vance, Trump watched on as his former rivals for the Republican nomination took the stage one by one. Nikki Haley opened her speech with a clear, firm endorsement of the former president, which was welcomed with thunderous applause. She then set about trying to convince the Republicans who supported her, even long after it was clear Trump had the nomination sewn up, to back the man she once sharply criticized. The rest of her speech touched on foreign policy, immigration and crime, taking swipes at US President Joe Biden and Vice President Kamala Harris for good measure.
We should acknowledge that there are some Americans who don't agree with Donald Trump 100% of the time. I happen to know some of them. You don't have to agree with Trump 100% of the time to vote for him. Take it from me, I haven't always agreed with President Trump. But we agree more often than we disagree.
Earlier, another Trump's rival, Ron DeSantis, the conservative Florida governor, whose campaign sputtered earlier in the year, received a warm welcome from the crowd as he attacked Biden as too old for the job. His speech was focused on apprehensions on Biden's leadership at 81 besides economy and the border, and finished his speech saying Americans need to fight, fight, fight.
Joe Biden has failed this nation. As a veteran, I was appalled when 13 of our service members were killed in Afghanistan due to Joe Biden's dereliction of duty. As a citizen, as a husband, and as a father, I am alarmed that the current president of the United States lacks the capability to discharge the duties of his office.
And the show of harmony was intended to contrast with the Democratic Party, which has spent weeks mired in intra-party tensions over whether Biden should abandon his re-election bid after his halting June 27 debate performance against Trump raised fresh questions about his age and mental acuity. And Vivek Ramaswamy too spoke at the convention, stressing on safe neighborhoods, clean streets, good jobs, a better life for children, and a justice system that treats everyone equally, regardless of your skin color or your political beliefs.
That the media doesn't want you to hear from the Republican Party. Our message to black Americans is this: the media has tried to convince you for decades that Republicans don't care about your communities, but we do. We want for you what we want for every American: safe neighborhoods, clean streets, good jobs, a better life for your children, and a justice system that treats everyone equally, regardless of your skin color and regardless of your political beliefs.
And J.D. Vance was a bitter critic of Donald Trump in the lead-up to the 2016 presidential election. Publicly, he also called the Republican presidential candidate an idiot. Trump has named Vance as his running mate for 2024 elections. A video has surfaced on internet from a talk Vance gave at the University of Chicago Institute of Politics in February 2017. Though the talks were focused on Vance's best-selling memoir, Hillbilly, during the talk he said that he did not vote for Trump in the 2016 election and was concerned about Trump's rhetoric, but agreed with his focus on jobs.
This implicates something I said earlier, though, that there's this question of the alternative, right? I didn't vote for Trump. I am hopeful, like I think most Americans, that he'll be successful because his success is now the country's success. But I didn't vote for Hillary either. And so there's this issue where even for me, as problematic as I saw a lot of Trump's rhetoric and his ideas on how to fix some of these problems, I agreed with him that the problems were there. But it was just really hard for me to vote for Hillary Clinton. And definitely some people who voted for Trump were racist and they voted for him for racist reasons. I always resist the idea that the real thing driving most Trump voters was racial anxiety or racial animus, partially because I didn't see it, right? I mean, the thing that really motivated people to vote for Trump, first in the primary and then in the general election, was three words: jobs, jobs, jobs.
And the Inspector General of the U.S. Department of Homeland Security is investigating the Secret Service's planning of the weekend rally in Butler, Pennsylvania, where a man tried to assassinate former President Donald Trump. The Secret Service is responsible for protecting presidents and former presidents. Security at the Republican presidential candidates rally in Pennsylvania has been under scrutiny after the former president was shot at the event. The FBI said it was probing the shooting as an assassination attempt. U.S. Republican presidential candidate Donald Trump claims that Taiwan should pay the United States for its defense as it does not give the country anything while sending shares of Taiwan's semiconductor manufacturing company. TSMC is the dominant maker of advanced chips used in everything from artificial intelligence. The U.S. is Taiwan's most important international supporter and arms supplier, but there is no formal defense agreement. The U.S. is, however, bound by law to provide Taiwan with the means to defend itself. Taiwan, which China views as its own territory, has complained of repeated Chinese military activity over the past 4 years. Now, U.S. President Joe Biden spent Tuesday trying to win over black voters in the state of Nevada. It comes a day after he described his use of the word bullseye when talking about Donald Trump a mistake. His use of language has been called into question in light of the assassination attempt on his rival in November's presidential election. DD India's Nick Harper reports.
Biden spent Tuesday campaigning in the swing state of Nevada, a state where polls show him to be 4 percentage points behind Donald Trump. There he courted black voters, a crucial voting bloc and a demographic which helped him win the White House back in 2020. He gave an interview to Black Entertainment Television and spoke to the NAACP, a group that advocates for the rights of black Americans and people of colour. He used that campaign event to speak about how he believes he's helped minority groups during his presidency and how he would help them again if re-elected.
From a guy who spread the birthism lie against Barack Obama, saying he wasn't born in America and he wasn't a U.S. citizen. Of course, here's what he thinks of black jobs. I love his phrase, black jobs. It tells a lot about the man and about his character. Folks, I know what a black job is. It's the Vice President of the United States. Folks, it's because of you that I'm President and Kamala Harris is Vice President. And by the way, she's not only a great vice president, she could be president of the United States. Let me say this again, because Trump is lying like hell about it. The black unemployment hit a record low under Biden-Harris administration.
But Biden has also faced severe criticism over the last few days since the attempted assassination of Donald Trump. Before the shooting, he said that Democrats should put Trump in a bullseye. During an interview with NBC on Monday, he was asked about that comment and admitted it had been a mistake to use the term, but he tried to explain it by saying that by bullseye he meant for his team to focus on Trump's policies and Trump's own rhetoric. Biden then mentioned some of the inflammatory rhetoric that Trump has previously used, including saying that he would be a dictator if re-elected and joking about the hammer attack on former House Speaker Nancy Pelosi's husband. Nick Harper in Washington, reporting for DD India.
And Rwandan President Paul Kagame has won the country's presidential election with 99% of the votes, according to preliminary results released by the country's Electoral Commission. The head of the electoral body says they have counted more than 80% of the votes cast. However, full provisional results are due by July 20th and definitive results by July 27th. DD India's Chris Ochamringa has more from Kinshasa.
Partial results announced by Rwanda's Electoral Commission show incumbent President Paul Kagame with a clear lead of 99%. The 66-year-old leader received more than 7 million votes out of over 9 million ballots cast. His closest challenger, Frank Habineza, garnered 38,000 votes, while independent candidate Philip Mpayimana got 22,700 votes. Their tallies were less than 1% of the vote. President Kagame ran against them in the country's last elections in 2017 and won by a similar margin. The country's Electoral Commission barred a prominent opponent of Kagame from running in this year's polls for reportedly failing to provide the required paperwork. The results will extend President Kagame's 24-year rule by another 5 years. He thanked Rwandans for their trust in an address at his party headquarters in Kigali. Vote counting is still going on and provisional results are expected to be announced on July 20th. President Kagame has been the de facto leader of Rwanda since 1994 and officially became president in 2000. His critics accuse him of stifling dissent and sponsoring rebels to destabilize neighboring Democratic Republic of Congo. But his supporters praise him for restoring peace and building the country that was devastated by the genocide of 1994, where 800,000 Tutsis and moderate Hutus were killed by Hutu extremists. Chris Ochamringa in Kinshasa, reporting for DD India.
Now, the 16-strong crew of a Comoros-flagged oil tanker that capsized off Oman are still missing. Country's Maritime Security Center said on Tuesday that the crew of Prestige Falcon comprised 13 Indian nationals and 3 Sri Lankans. Omani authorities are conducting a search and rescue operation at the scene in coordination with maritime authorities. The tanker was heading to the Yemeni port of Aden and capsized off Oman's major industrial port of Duqm on Monday. Now, tens of thousands of students across Bangladesh joined nationwide protest for a second day, protesting against the quota system for government jobs. At least 6 people were killed and more than 100 people were injured on Tuesday in rallies that blocked major highways and rail links. Schools and universities across Bangladesh have been shut until further notice. Protests began earlier this month when the High Court ordered the government to reinstate the 30% job quota. The border guard, Bangladesh paramilitary force, was deployed across the country to tighten security. On Monday, U.S. State Department spokesperson Matthew Miller expressed concerns about the ongoing protest in Bangladesh. Bangladesh reacted sharply to Miller's comments on the student protest in the country, saying such statements undermine the government's efforts to maintain a peaceful environment. Now, police in Thailand said on Wednesday that cyanide poisoning was likely the cause of death of 6 foreigners who have been found dead inside a luxury hotel room in central Bangkok, with one of the dead the suspected killer. Addressing media, Thai police stated that they have found traces of cyanide in the drinking glasses and a water container, and interviews with relatives of the dead revealed there had been a dispute over debt. The 6 were of Vietnamese origin, several with US passports. Some weather updates now. Heavy rainfall in southeast Canada prompts flood warnings. Torrential rains flood Toronto, causing power outages, traffic disruption. Emergency services were seen rescuing motorists stranded in their cars on a flooded road near Toronto, Canada. The intense rain has caused several roads near water bodies to become heavily flooded. The authorities have asked residents to remain cautious as flooding occurs in several parts of Toronto. Well, flash floods hit the streets of Nashville on Tuesday after reports of dam failures in the area. The Washington County Emergency Management Agency reported the Nashville Dam had failed due to heavy rainfall. A secondary dam has also reportedly failed, with evacuation of some residents in place. Over 5 inches of rain has fallen in parts of Nashville. HSBC said on Wednesday that Chief Financial Officer Georges El-Hedri will become Group CEO. El-Hedri, who becomes HSBC's third CEO in less than 8 years, will replace outgoing head Noel Quinn from September 2nd. The 160-year-old lender has traditionally appointed its CEO from within since 2020. El-Hedri has been the co-head of the global banking and markets business, the division that houses HSBC's trading and investment banking advisory businesses. Quinn, who led the global lender for 5 years, will remain CEO until his successor starts in the role. All right, we'll step into a very short break, but still to come on this edition of DD India Live. India has once again called for much-needed reforms at the UN, said multipolarity being witnessed in the world is here to stay.
On defense dynamics, we will analyze news recently to do with India's latest light combat aircraft, the Tejas Mark 1A. We will be exploring the latest advancements from its cutting-edge technology to its impressive combat capabilities. We will dive into what makes this aircraft a game changer for Indian Air Force. And we'll look at how the Tejas compares to its competitors, including the Chinese J-10. Don't miss in-depth analysis only on DD India on Wednesday at 8:30 p.m. IST.
Welcome back. You're watching DD India Live. I'm Abhishek Mahajan. Some more stories. India has once again called for much-needed reforms at the UN, starting with the United Nations Security Council. Delivering India's statement at the UNSC open debate on multilateral cooperation in the interest of a more just, democratic and sustainable world order, Charge d'Affaires Ambassador R. Ravindra said that multipolarity being witnessed in the world is here to stay. Take a listen.
Multipolarity, as we are witnessing it now, is here to stay. The primary reason the multilateral system has failed to deliver is that it is still stuck in a 1945 vintage binary outlook, reflected clearly in the composition of this Security Council. The core of India's position on reformed multilateralism, therefore, lies in a call for the reform of the UN Security Council that is reflective of contemporary realities of today. For multilateral cooperation to deliver, it must emanate from a representation of developing countries in all major decision-making bodies, especially in the peace and security architecture. As we convene for the Summit of the Future, let us recommit to time-bound negotiations on UNSC reforms. The multilateral system cannot deliver without the sustained commitment of major powers and groups to global institutions and a rules-based order. And in this context, it is important that all must adhere to the basic building block of international cooperation, which is good faith negotiations. Sabotaging of negotiating processes and mechanisms by big countries or groups in the narrow interest of their own positions is detrimental to the multilateral spirit and must be called out wherever necessary.
In the remote hilly area of Dessa in Dora district, a fresh contact has been made with terrorists in the Karlan area. Security forces have been conducting a large-scale search operation in the Dessa forest for the third consecutive day, following a clash that began on Monday evening. Terrorists attacked the joint forces in the Dessa forest, in which a major and 4 soldiers were killed. To neutralize the terrorists, security forces have expanded their operation and enlisted the services of paracommandos. Despite the dense forest, the terrorists are continuously evading the forces and changing their hideouts. A brief encounter occurred in the same area on Tuesday as well, but the terrorists managed to escape again. Additional troops have been deployed and drones are being used to monitor every activity in the forest. Now, Finance Minister Nirmala Sitharaman will present the financial year 2024-25 full union budget in Parliament on 23rd July. Citizens look forward to the occasion with several expectations and hopes as it sets the financial course for the next year. We speak to Mumbaikars belonging to various sectors about their expectations.
So I would expect the budget to focus on giving more support to MSMEs. There are some taxation issues which have been sorted out, but still MSMEs require working capital support all the way, and a kind of hand-holding, because any dispute that goes away straight to the courts. So better arbitration, better ombudsman in every sector.
Simplification and transparency are the two basic pillars which people are looking for from the point of view of corporates as well as for middle class. As far as middle class is concerned, there are some tax rationalizations which are required, and when I say tax, it is not only direct tax but also indirect taxes. If we can facilitate an environment, particularly in the debt market, where even corporates are motivated, incentivized to spend, if not more, at least 1 rupee for matching the government's contribution, the pace for infrastructure would possibly move up very fast.
For a farmer in India, there are a lot of subsidies and benefits already provided by the government, but then a lot of it gets lost in translation and lost in disbursement. So maybe having a direct disbursement into their bank accounts, which has been the dream project of India, if that is completely done, I think that would really help. Secondly, the government has always had a dream of doubling farmers' income. And one of the ways that can happen is if the Indian agricultural market is available to the global market.
When we ask for some additional support to get the credit from the banks is always a task. We never get the right support that we expect as women entrepreneurs. So how are we also going to grow further down in our business?
And 2 more children died of suspected Chandipura virus infection in India's central state of Gujarat, taking the number of fatalities attributed to the infection in the state so far to 8. Gujarat Health Minister Rishikesh Patel said briefing reporters in state capital Gandhinagar the State Health Department had undertaken intensive surveillance of the affected districts and a special advisory had been issued to the community.
गुजरात के अंदर 1965 में जो महाराष्ट्र में पहली बार देखा गया चांदीपुरम का जो रोग बच्चों में होता है, वो अभी गुजरात में भी अभी इस मॉनसून में पाया गया है। उसके लिए राज्य सरकार ने बहुत सारे एक्शन भी लिए हैं। अभी तक जितने भी हमारे केसेस आए हैं उनके लिए एक एडवाइजरी भी जाहिर की है। अपने जितने भी पीएचसी, सीएचसी, सब डिस्ट्रिक्ट हॉस्पिटल और मेडिकल कॉलेज है उसमें भी कि ऐसे कोई भी इनिशियल लक्षण मालूम पड़े तो तुरंत उसकी सारवार चांदीपुरम समझ के उसकी करनी है, वो भी बोल दिया है।
Now let's take a look at other stories making news today. India's Minister of State for Science and Technology, Dr. Jitendra Singh, inaugurated Asia's first health research-related preclinical network facility at the Transnational Health Science and Technology Institute, Faridabad, on Tuesday. The ministry said that the facility will be 9th such network laboratory across the globe and the first such laboratory in the whole of Asia. The Muslim community across India and the world are observing Muharram, the Islamic New Year, today. People were seen attending Muharram procession in Delhi's Chhatarpur. The Indian women's cricket team landed in Sri Lanka for the T20 Asia Cup beginning in Dambulla on July 19th. The Indian players arrived at Colombo Airport. India will kick off its campaign against arch rivals Pakistan on the opening day of the competition. There will be another match between UAE and Nepal in a day. The 8-team tournament consists of defending champions India, Pakistan, Nepal, United Arab Emirates, Sri Lanka, Bangladesh, Malaysia and Thailand. The tournament will serve as a preparatory event for the World Cup in Bangladesh in October. Well, that's all for this edition of DD India Live, but do let us know your thoughts on the news of the day. For those on the go, you can get all the latest news and updates from India and across the world on DD India mobile app. The app is available on both Android and iOS. Scan the QR code on the screen to download now. And we'll be back with more news as it breaks here on DD India. I'm Abhishek from all of us here in Delhi. Thanks for watching DD India Live.